Chapter 286. Yeah. I can't go to the hospital this morning. Luonan rode his bicycle and asked Bai Xingyan for a leave of absence. His breathing was hurried. The cold wind that assaulted his face choked him, and he coughed a few times. Bai Xingyan's ears were sharp. She roughly judged Luonan's current situation. Morning exercise. Pay attention to the amount of exercise. As for treatment, your current condition is stable. It's fine to miss it once in a while. Oh right. How's the sleeping ability going? Luonan grunted and grunted in response. He didn't say much. Bai Xingyan didn't ask any more questions, and quickly hung up. It looked like she was going to carry out the pleasure therapy to the end with such an attitude. Luonan huffed and puffed, forming faint white smoke in the cold morning. Right now it was 7:20 in the morning. He was still one street away from his final destination, Acumen College. But he had been riding for nearly 2 hours, and his stamina was pretty much squeezed out. Shuelei was ahead of him by a body length. Right now Luonan felt that his thighs were stiff. His calf muscles were spasming. His chest and back felt as if they had been washed. He couldn't even stand up on the bicycle. Shuelei looked back and slowed down a bit. It could be seen that he still had energy to spare. Luonan really envied this animal that seemed to never know exhaustion. Shuelei didn't travel the distance of nearly 50 kilometers in a well-behaved manner. He was like a long-distance runner all the way down. During this time, he switched to many different running styles. Many times he punched and kicked. He leaped between floors as he advanced. In terms of movement volume, in terms of consumption, he exceeded Luonan by several tens of times. At this moment, even if the two of them slowed down, Shuelei's movement intensity was also correspondingly increasing based on the distance he advanced. Beside him, the sounds of fists and sleeves slicing through the air could be heard. He was simply a training maniac who was harsh on himself and sweating like rain. If Shuelei was like this every day, Luonan could more or less understand why Shuelei possessed such astonishing strength that even Zhang Yingying and the other awakened could not stop praising him at such a young age. Speaking of which, Luonan had been brought into a rhythm by Shuelei today. He had practically brought out the strength of a race. The cyclist was led around in circles by the runner. It was quite embarrassing just thinking about it. Finally, Shuelei's morning exercise came to an end. He stopped and let out a long breath before switching to a brisk walk. Perhaps it was because he felt Luonan's gaze that he turned his face. Nanster, don't be offended. It's not good to talk when I'm training. Indeed, Shuelei hadn't spoken a single word along the way, which was quite different from his straightforward and talkative personality. It's nothing. It's pretty good this way. Luonan was truly impressed. He was also deeply moved. How can you not put in effort when it comes to practicing martial arts? Shuelei didn't immediately speak. He sized Luonan up and down a few times. Then he grinned and said, "The gym master often says that luck is number one in martial cultivation. If you can't grasp your luck, then don't mention anything else." Luonan went, "Ah." He really couldn't think of any connection here. He couldn't help but ask, "What's the theory behind this?" The dojo master once used breathing as an example and talked about it. "Let me tell you about it." Shuelei shook his head and said, "The human body has respiration and metabolism, and so does the world. We are insignificant and short-sighted. We can only see what's in front of us, concentrating on our own breath and breath. The breath of the world needs to be sought in the hazy long river of time. We are unable to see the flow of time. It's very difficult for us to coordinate our breathing with the breathing of the world. But we can be sailors. We can use our bodies as boats. We can use fine operations to ensure that we don't miss the slightest bit of wind direction and water flow within the waves of the long river of time. In the end, we can use the breath of the world to assist the breath of a single person, whether it's going with the current or against the waves. The speed of a boat is faster than the speed of water. This is the true meaning of cultivation. Within this, wind direction and water flow are luck. Sand can be gathered to form a tower. Wood can be gathered to form a forest. Small forces can be gathered to become great forces. One by one, they respond to the body and soul, strengthening the body and transforming the vital energy. Isn't this quite hard to understand? Shuelei was a bit uncertain of Luo Nan's ability to understand as he spoke. Luo Nan grunted. He knew that Shuelei wanted to remind him of a few things. It was probably something about focus and willpower. But Luo Nan was unable to understand the specifics. Shuelei laughed. I didn't understand at the time either. But then the gym master explained that we are all people who operate boats. It's hard to avoid being surrounded by dangers as we traverse the long river of time. In the olden days, when a fisherman on a river encountered a rapids and dangerous shoals, the boat would be destroyed and the people would die. The exhaustion of strength was secondary. The exhaustion of the mind to observe and utilize the water was the main problem. Practicing martial arts and cultivating may seem like tempering one's strength, but in reality, it tempers the willpower. It tortures the mind. Whether it's ordinary training or facing enemies in battle, the mind comes before the energy, and the energy comes before the strength. And the weight of the exhaustion should be lower. That's the only reasonable thing to do. Luo Nan looked at Shuelei. This time he finally confirmed it. Wasn't he the type of person that Shuelei spoke of? Wasn't he the type of person who consumed far more physical strength than mental strength? The bodily functions of his entire body were already at their limits, but his mind was still very active. From Shuelei's perspective, was his concentration not enough? Was this a criticism? With Shuelei's temperament, no matter how tactful his words were, this was the limit. For a time, the exhaustion on Luo Nan's body felt like it was being pricked by needles. Even the breath he breathed out was a bit feverish. Shuelei was a bit worried that he might have gone overboard with his words. He subconsciously waved his hand, but he himself was a bit nervous. Nanster, actually where should the brain be used in order to be focused, in order to be used in a reasonable manner? Luo Nan didn't let Shuelei speak nonsense. He asked very seriously. Luo Nan wouldn't get angry over such a small matter as his friend, but he really didn't understand. Logically speaking, he had been studying and practicing extremely seriously from last night until now. There shouldn't have been any instances of his mind wandering off or slacking off. Shuelei let out a sigh of relief when he saw that Luo Nan's state of mind was fine. He hurriedly explained. Nanster, you really are working hard, but you're not too familiar with the know-how inside. You're using your functions carelessly. You must know that walking, sitting, and lying down are all part of cultivation. Every movement of your hands and feet requires effort. You need to use your heart. You cultivate the eye's orifice. The eyes are the light of the mind. Wherever the eyes go, the heart goes. Every movement of your hands and feet requires the eyes to take care of them. Luo Nan looked at his hands and feet and laughed bitterly. But I'm riding a bike. Everything in the multitude returns to their roots. If your hands and feet move, then guard your dantian region. These are just small tricks. The truly difficult part is to look at yourself and others, without leaving a single strand behind. Don't give up a single drop. Go from the outside to the inside. Return to your roots. Only then will you know what it means to shine like a candle. Only then will you know what it means to work hard. Only then will you know what true hardship is. Cough. The gym master told me to come here to tell you this. The last sentence was the bottom line. Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment. His gaze moved away from Shuelei's body. He first looked at his clothes, which were nearly drenched in sweat. Soon he raised his head and looked at the pedestrians coming and going on the street. Most of the pedestrians were students at this hour, but they were of all shapes and colors. Luo Nan used his mental clairvoyance and roughly calculated that there were around 700 to 800 people on this street. This ability of his was hard to come by even among the awakened. Ordinary people were far inferior to him. But if Luo Nan were to go deeper and observe the movements of his hands and feet, the changes in his body, not a single strand would be missed. Just looking at 5 or 6 people coming and going around him would cause him to feel mentally and physically exhausted, let alone a street. Of course, there was also himself. If he really wanted to be refined and detailed, wouldn't he have to incorporate all of the changes in the reactions of his flesh, blood, and nerves into his cognitive program? Was this something a human could do? Was this considered cultivation? Chapter 287. Luo Nan sat on the stone steps. The loose-leaf notebook rested on his knees, positioned at a comfortable angle. Behind him, the classical auditorium only blocked half of the sunlight. The lukewarm sunlight and the chilly shadows laid side by side. He just so happened to be at the boundary of light and shadow. He faced the complex lighting environment with his eyes half squinted. His focus overlapped with the tip of his pen, and he moved his pen along the surface of the paper, revealing neat characters. The breathing metabolism of heaven and earth is the format of heaven and earth. The breathing metabolism of the human body is the format of the self. In order to make the tiny self format display its effect within the hazy heaven and earth format, not only must the power be great, but the power must also be small. I did it too crudely in the past. I did it too clumsily. He raised his head as he wrote to this point. His gaze cut across the stream of people outside the auditorium. The auditorium, and the vicinity of the South Bank riverbank, were undoubtedly the areas with the most student congregated during society activity time. They spanned many ages, high and low, big and small, beautiful and beautiful men and women. They came and went, forming a dynamic picture. If this were 10 days ago, Luo Nan's observations would have transformed into a sketch. He would have captured a few people with special characteristics to form the typical characteristics of this place and time. If this were 3 days ago, Luo Nan would have done his best to distinguish and memorize everyone within his line of sight. Their faces, their movements, their clothing, their relationships with each other, and so on. Right now Luo Nan was sitting on the steps of the auditorium. He swept his eyes across and selected 10 people from the several hundred people below the steps. These 10 people were in different positions. There were men and women. They were of different ages and different societies. And in the next half-minute, these 10 people passed by Luo Nan's side in order to ascend the auditorium. Compared to the others, these 10 people were the closest to Luo Nan. There was practically no difference in the order they passed by. It was only until the last 2 people answered the phone that a situation where the order was reversed appeared. Not bad. 80%. Bystanders couldn't see it, but Luo Nan understood it clearly. Every time a person passed by 2 meters away, the muscles of his body would tense up and relax. His pores would open and close in response. This was how he was startled. He ensured that he would be able to jump up and react when each person approached him. His potential was hidden and not released, but it consumed quite a bit. A thin layer of sweat covered his body by the time the 10 people passed by. His breathing was a bit ragged. This was how much physical strength was consumed, and the loss of mental strength was even greater. His 80% accuracy rate was not achieved by luck, but by observing the gazes, postures, steps, positions, and distances of hundreds of people, from big to small, from the outside to the inside. This was precisely what Gym Master Xiao meant when he said, "With me as the master, look at yourself and look at others." He was not an inanimate object like a camera, but a living person. Every time he glanced at someone, he had to refer to himself. He had to clarify key information, determine priorities, foresee, prepare, and react accordingly. Therefore, the cultivation of the eye's orifice had never been focused on cultivating the eyes. Instead, the eye's orifice was the forerunner, and it was a systematic project that integrated heart strength, vitality, and the body into one. It was a wondrous cultivation that used a single point to move the whole body. Luo Nan spent nearly a week to comprehend it. Then he used another 3 days to consolidate it. On the 10th day, he could be considered to have crossed the threshold. Thinking back to the cultivation process, it was truly unbearable. This required Luo Nan to maintain a high level of acuity from beginning to end. He was not allowed to be distracted or absent-minded. In the beginning, he was unable to accurately determine the priorities of information. He just felt that his eyes were not meticulous enough. He hated that he could not copy everything in his field of vision. It seemed that if he did not do this, he would not be able to reach the standard of arduous cultivation that Gym Master Xiao spoke of. This meant that he was completely focused at every moment, tormenting his mind until his eyesight and brain power were squeezed clean. Now that he thought back to it, Luo Nan felt that his eyes were sore and swollen. He reflexively wanted to shed tears, or he might as well just close his eyes, lie down and sleep. This was the greatest joy in the world. When Bai Xingyan saw Luo Nan in this state, she completely cancelled her Frost River waterway training. According to her, Xiao Xinyu's torture was more effective than any consumption of energy. If Luo Nan continued to burn like this, Luo Nan would not be able to last until Dr. Clay, who had repeatedly delayed his trip, arrived at Xia City. Luo Nan now knew that he had taken a detour, but Gym Master Xiao had lightly said that beginners shouldn't be afraid of going overboard. It was possible to want to be neutral, to foresee the extremes, and to measure the increase and decrease. Alright, Luo Nan would remember to measure the increase and decrease for the rest of his life. Luo Nan flipped his notebook forward to the flexible e-ink screen. He opened the statistical form and added the results of this training. Then he returned to the diary page and held a pen to write. October 25th. Training with 1,000 people completed. Overall success rate, 72.2%. After dividing into groups, success rate, 55.6%. Final success rate, 19%. After completing the basic data analysis, Luo Nan closed his notebook. He ignored the strange gazes of the pedestrians around him and took out a bottle of medicine. He poured a drop of eye drops into his eyes and did a facial massage. His eyes were first soaked with coolness, then steam rose in the blink of an eye. The medicinal strength of his fingers seeped in, fusing with his vital energy and moisturizing his eyes. The medicine was a secret recipe provided by Gym Master Xiao. It was concocted by Bro Octopus, and it could relieve eye fatigue. But then again, using his eyes too much was a sign of his clumsiness. The human eye was a precise and complex structure. Anatomically speaking, one would not be able to find the existence of the eye's orifice, even if they searched through all the positions of the eyes. The so-called eye's orifice was actually the eyes and its corresponding functions. It interfered with the mental plane to form a special structure. It lay between the virtual and the real. Only in this place could one achieve the effect of connecting the inside and the outside, radiating with spiritual light. It was practically impossible for a normal person to possess the eye's orifice. Only by possessing a certain level of cultivation could one realize the interference between the mental and the material plane. Only then would the eye's orifice be gradually constructed. It was the same as the shield of truth. The shield of truth that Luo Nan experienced was considered a temporary structure. But building the eye's orifice was tantamount to building a permanent facility. Luo Nan already had a slight feeling. His eyelids drooped down, but he could feel a heavy pressure acting on them. The pressure came from the format pyramid. It was his power on the mental plane. It was the influence it had on his body on the material plane. Other people cultivated by creating something out of nothing. Only Luo Nan wanted to steal a beam and replace a pillar. He shifted the power that was trapped in the My Heart's a Prison format to a controllable level. After these days of exploration, Luo Nan felt that calling it confinement was not completely correct. It should be said that his soul strength had entered a processing line. It had to complete the process and become a certain finished product before it could be taken off the line. This greatly limited the scope of its usage. It was fine to use chains to bind people, but it was hard to use it for embroidery. If Luo Nan really wanted to transport the raw materials, then he would need to break through the barrier of My Heart's a Prison. First, he would have to consume the materials internally. It could be said that not even 1 out of 100 could be saved, and it had to be done on and off. There was no efficiency to speak of. It was precisely because of this that the results of the soul strength activation exercises in the simulator layer of the psychic wave network were so terrible. But now that he was cultivating in the eye's orifice, the intermittent supply was not unbearable. This kind of work of grinding with water had the material plane constantly bearing and echoing it. It could be said that dripping water wears away a stone. Even if only a single drop was transported out every day, it would leave a mark when it smashed down. It would be like this day in and day out. It would be like a depression that could store water. Like this, it would gradually expand. Plus, Luo Nan was not that miserable yet. The eye's orifice that Luo Nan had just built was like a pool that stored water. Soul strength trickled in. As long as Luo Nan took care of it carefully and prevented it from evaporating or leaking, It could become a pool, a lake, or a sea after a long time. At this point, Luonan did not need Gym Master Xiao to mention it again. Luonan naturally understood the principle of concealment. He used 70% of his soul strength every day and stored 30%. 70% was used to temper the eye's orifice and build the structure. The remaining 30% was stored within. When Luonan closed his eyes, it was like rolling beads spinning in his eye sockets. It seemed cold, but it wasn't cold. It seemed hot, but it wasn't hot. It was warm and cool. It was hard to describe the wondrous feeling. Later on, it seemed as if a ball of light had lit up in his skull. It was hazy at first, like a candle that was about to go out. But if Luonan worked hard every day and wiped it, he would make progress. There was another name for this. One heart lantern, a candle illuminating the 9 underworlds. Gym Master Xiao had said that when the heart lantern probed and illuminated the inner organs, Luonan would have achieved minor success in the eye's orifice. At this point, the eye's orifice had truly set up a platform. It had an outline. It was no longer a mirage, or the ravings of a madman. Luonan didn't like to open his eyes because of this, especially when he was alone. He would droop his eyelids and feel the moist, warm, and cool feeling of the glimmering candlelight. It was truly a good feeling. He sat there, seemingly in peace yet not awake. His eyes could not see anyone, and he did not deliberately use his mental senses. Yet the pedestrians that passed by him all left behind faintly discernible traces on his body. When the heart lantern shone, the traces were revealed. Sometimes Luonan felt that he was like a spider. He used this marvelous method to weave an incorporeal web. The multitude of living beings, as long as they passed through, would give him a stir, and he would respond accordingly. In comparison, clairvoyance on the mental plane had a greater range and a deeper level, but it definitely did not have such a direct and pure reaction mechanism. Ha! Luonan's shoulders suddenly slumped, but he was a step too late. Shuele pressed down on him from behind, and the feeling of a spider weaving a web instantly shattered. The bug was too big. Huh? Did you use mental senses? No. Luonan's reaction failed. He was a bit depressed, but he still narrowed his eyes and responded with a single word in a bad mood. Then you can see me coming from behind? The heart lantern of the eye's orifice illuminates oneself and others. It's only been a few days. Beginners need to smelt their thoughts, open their flesh and bones, and build their foundation in 100 days. I used 2 months back in the day. Even Shuele was a bit envious when he saw Luonan's progress. I haven't succeeded yet, and I have a foundation. Hehe, the gym master said it earlier. Even if your foundation is deep, you are mostly affected by external techniques. Your body is weak. It's easy to understand, but it's harder to achieve than a normal person. Today is the 25th. You can see signs within 10 days. You're a genius. It's not that exaggerated. I can still borrow a bit of strength. Luonan had a self-knowledge that was hard for bystanders to understand. Speaking of which, it was quite a coincidence. An electric chain suddenly cut through his mind at this very moment. It flashed and disappeared, but it stirred up his thoughts. The heart lantern flickered, losing its stability and harmony, and its radiance grew brighter and brighter. He furrowed his brows. It leaked again. The land of the lake overflowed a bit. His small pond couldn't contain it. Before he could finish his thoughts, someone shouted from below the stairs. Nanster Leister, it's time. There was no need to look to know that Xie Junping had come to pick them up. Luonan temporarily dispersed his mind. He stood up and walked down the stairs shoulder to shoulder with Shuele. They entered the car. Chapter 288. The sightseeing bus sped through the campus. Most of the students of Acumen College were still brainstorming for the club activities. They were trembling with fear for the 8 credits a year. The people on the bus were truly hateful. Unfortunately, no one on the bus had this awareness. In a certain sense, they were a group of people isolated from the real campus. Shuele sat in the front seat and chatted with Xie Junping about the party. He was a bit curious and nervous after entering a completely unfamiliar circle. Xie Junping was laughing and joking with him. He spoke half-truths and half-lies, playing around with him. Luonan sat in the back. At first, he listened to Xie Junping and Shuelei chat. But then his mind sunk into the heart lantern of the eye's orifice. He clairvoyantly observed the flickering flames and the changes in the surrounding environment, not missing a hair. The heart lantern of the eye's orifice lit up, illuminating a region of his brain. The results of this cultivation were quite mysterious, but it wasn't the first guest in Luo Nan's brain. There was another object revolving around the heart lantern right now. The external neuron. This dynamo core was like a dragon that floated in his brain. It moved around the lantern, appearing and disappearing from time to time. When it got closer, the electricity overflowed, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. It intersected with the flames of the heart lantern, swallowing and spitting. It seemed as if it could be swallowed at any time. It made one's heart tremble with fear. This sort of situation had existed not long after the heart lantern was lit. And it absolutely didn't just look scary. This was the first time this thing came close. The energies of both sides reacted, and the electricity radiating from the external neuron directly extinguished the heart lantern. Luo Nan's many days of hard work were destroyed in an instant. Similar situations occurred 7 times in a row, tormenting Luo Nan until he began to doubt his life. In the 8th round, when he was close to despair, the electricity directly entered the heart lantern. It strongly fueled the ignition, illuminating everything with light. The amount of growth this time was 10 times more than the sum of his hard-earned savings. Over the next few days, the external neuron would come every time he finished cultivating in the eye's orifice. It would bombard the heart lantern with electricity. Luo Nan's goal of 1,000 people per day was to form groups of 100 people. He cultivated in 10 groups every day, and this lightning dragon would appear 10 times. Though it was never extinguished, sometimes the tyrannical electricity would greatly dampen the brightness and harmony of the heart lantern. If Luo Nan hadn't strengthened it a few times in between, Luo Nan's progress would have been unsightly. It was for this reason that Luo Nan admired Shuelei. Luo Nan felt rather complex feelings towards Shuelei. Don't look at his current progress as being delightful. In fact, it's all over again and again. Should I look at it after cultivating tomorrow? Perhaps it would completely collapse. Luo Nan had been in the Daoguan for a few days. He had long since understood the heart lantern. The first few times the heart lamp was extinguished, it was fortunate that his cultivation was shallow, and the backlash was not strong. It only took him 2 more days of effort. But now, if the heart lamp were to be extinguished once more, the damaged structure of his eyes and his mind and willpower would have to be restored. He would have to think about it for a year and a half. It was as if there was a bomb hidden in his brain that could explode at any time. And he was the one who put it in his brain. Luo Dong School. Through. Was. Luoyang Academy, Chun and Star. Out. He said. Lu. He thought for a moment, then added the word electricity after the word fire, followed by the word ice, before he finally gave up. After writing these words, he unconsciously sighed. It wasn't a good analogy to call a bomb. It would be more appropriate to call it an iceberg. They were all hidden beneath the surface of the water, waiting for people to crash into them. After cultivating in the eye's orifice for a few days, Luo Nan felt that his greatest harvest was that he now understood the standard of precision needed for true cultivation. He also used this precision to re-examine the process of practicing formatting theory. He wanted to know if he had made any mistakes. Of course, the answer was yes. Whether or not formatting theory had its own flaws, he would not discuss it for the time being. In his cultivation of formatting theory, there were too many things that he knew but did not know why. He relied on his grandfather's theory to walk down this path. Many small details were determined by his own laws. This was why Xiu had labeled him an external law and had trapped him in a cage. The current situation faced by the heart lantern of the eye's orifice was the death Luo Nan brought upon himself. The use of the external neuron's void depository function originated from Elder Emoluan of the Blood Flame Order. At the time, Luo Nan's soul strength was growing explosively. The imbalance between his body and soul intensified, and he did not know how to deal with it. It just so happened that the Wraith sign had occupied the magpie's nest and was lurking by Emoluan's side. Luonan used the wraith sign as his eyes and ears. He referred to Imoluan's methods against the soul envoy, and took the initiative to pull apart the distance between his body and soul. His soul and body seemed to be joined, but they weren't. This reduced the pressure on his fleshly body. This method was indeed effective, but there were many repercussions. It caused Luonan to be sensitive and have many dreams. His mind was absent-minded. Later, Luonan discovered that the external neuron had the void depository function. When his soul was entrusted to it, it was like entering an empty world. There were no distracting psychic waves. Later, the wraith sign hunted and created a disturbance. He relied on the external neuron to cushion the pressure, saving his life. Since then, Luonan had always entrusted his soul to the external neuron to reduce the pressure. He gradually grew accustomed to it. So it was more accurate to say that Luonan's body and soul had been lacking a fusion for a very long time. Most of his soul was entrusted to the external neuron. Even though this strange object was hidden in his brain, it was not an organ of his flesh and blood. There was still a layer separating the two. Xiao said that the fleshly body was rejected by the external technique. When combined with reality, it was actually a barrier and conflict between the external neuron, which was the carrier of the soul, and the naturally existing fleshly body. This was the crux of the problem. At the very least, this was the case in the realm of understanding. This was where the matter came to a dead end. Luonan could control the external neuron, causing it to move to various parts of his brain. He could even drive it out. However, his frail fleshly body was far from being able to bear the heavy pressure of his soul body. He could not do without the void depository function. Moreover, in the end, he would need to transfer soul strength from the My Heart's a Prison format to refine it. The connection between the eye's orifice, and it was inevitable. Especially after every refinement of the orifice, the eye's orifice would become nimble and harmonious, linking his body and soul. It was like the positive and negative charges in a rain cloud attracting each other. The situation of lightning bombarding the heart lantern was inevitable. This meant that every time Luonan practiced, he would have to face the dangerous test of entering a state of mental derangement. He failed the first 7 times, but he persevered through the next few dozen times. He even obtained some benefits. It looked like this business was feasible. However, the matter of cultivation required meticulous concentration. What they feared the most were ups and downs. Even if this kind of benefit was multiplied by 10 times, it would not be able to withstand the destructive blow brought by a moment of crisis. The problem is fatal, and having no one to help is even more fatal. Luonan did not open his eyes. He just used his fingertips to streak across the pages of the notebook, flipping them back and forth. The external neuron was a core, a secret that could easily be stripped away. He would not tell anyone about its existence. This led him to rely on himself. He pondered over his plans bit by bit. It had been 6 days since the first time the heart lantern was lit. He had dealt with 60 strikes of lightning. In the beginning, Luonan could not think of anything else. He could only do his utmost to strengthen the structure of the eye's orifice. He would rather greatly slow down his progress, in order to stabilize the foundation of the heart lantern. He even referred to the configuration of Fairchild's shield of truth. He borrowed the half-formed eye's orifice, the fusion of body and soul. He spent a great deal of effort to fine-tune the microscopic structure of the eyes. It was for no other purpose than to seek stability. Though this method was stupid, the results were decent. Especially after repeated experiences a few dozen times. It was like the forging method of tempered steel in ancient times. Luonan forged and hammered again and again, causing the structure of the eye's orifice to become tough and solid. The ignited heart lantern emitted a mellow and pure intent. Only in this way was he able to block 53 strikes of lightning in a row, and remain undefeated. However, Luonan still had a deep worry in his heart. This worry grew heavier and heavier, as he pondered deeper and deeper into the phenomenon of the heart lantern being electrocuted. "Nanster, what are you thinking about?" Xie Juanping's deliberately raised voice finally entered Luonan's ears. Luonan was a bit startled. He half opened his eyes and looked forward. "What's wrong?" Shuelei's complaint rang out at the same time. "Don't disturb him. Maybe he's cultivating. Xie Junping laughed. The car is swaying back and forth. What kind of cultivation is he cultivating? Aren't you afraid of running amok? Luo Nan was left speechless after being stabbed in the face. Xie Junping didn't look at the road. He turned his head and laughed. People train in martial arts. The more they train, the more spirited they become. For example, Leicester. But look at you. You've been drooping your eyes these past few days. It's like you haven't woken up yet. If you train like this, which pretty girl would pay attention to you? Luo Nan leaned back, doing his best to relax his body. His eyes remained squinted. Yesterday you said that you were going to meet some friends. It would be more convenient to deal with the matter of gear. Of course I said that. Xie Junping put on an innocent face. But didn't I tell you? Vice President Tang Yi of the Mystic Arts Research Society has the highest chance of ascending. Her nickname is Blood Peony. She's a standard beauty complex. You can't even get close to her, unless you're a handsome guy over 80 points. Even if you do get close, most of them will be trampled into the dirt. Right now you're relying on your Shota face. You're barely able to muddle along with being delicate and cute. If you don't pull yourself together, your future will be unpredictable. Luo Nan let out a long sigh. He simply closed his eyes completely. He was too lazy to say anything more. But at this time, the heart lantern burned in his brain. The flames burned brightly, but it lost its harmony. Clearly, the 60th electric shock had stuffed the heart lantern too full. Restoring the heart lantern to the eye's orifice would certainly form pressure on the incomplete structure. This was a situation that needed to be dealt with first. Luo Nan was used to this. He didn't open his eyes. His fingertips fumbled with the notebook, flipping it to the back. He found a flat piece of soft paper sandwiched between the pages. The paper was thin and a bit rough, but it was valuable. This was a paper talisman that Mr. Gao had personally made. It was quite extravagant for Luo Nan to use it for practice. He stroked the paper in his hand, recalling the techniques that Papercut had taught him. His fingertips moved, and he folded the paper talisman in a simple manner. He held it in his palm. His eyes could not see, but the heart lantern was focused. In his brain, the flame suddenly flared and then extinguished. In this instant, Luo Nan's hand that held the paper talisman felt as if it had been burned by an incorporeal flame. A burning pain pierced through him. His 5 fingers instinctively opened, and it seemed as if some ash impurities were leaking out from between his fingers. Then there was a very real feeling of impact. Luo Nan's 5 fingers closed once more. Only then did he open his eyes to look. There was no paper talisman at this time. All he saw was a paper man with all 4 limbs. It had a muddle-looking face, and it was about the size of a palm. It had collided with the inner edge of Luo Nan's thumb, and then it went limp. The open car frame sent a cool breeze over, and the paper man's hands and feet shook. There was no other reaction besides this. Chapter 289. My luck is pretty good. Luo Nan's gaze swept over the paper man's body a few times. He flipped the notebook to a blank page and placed the paper man inside. There were already 3 similar interlayers as he flipped through the pages. There were a total of 4 paper men hidden in the notebook, including this one. Some were bigger, some were smaller, but the material was the same. These paper men were created by Luo Nan when his eyes' orifices were overflowing, and the pressure was overloaded. They were created to shift the pressure. There were 60 lightning strikes. Aside from the first 7 times the heart lantern was extinguished, there were also the broken and basically balanced rounds. There were a total of 25 times when the pressure had to be shifted. However, only 4 succeeded in the end. The success rate was only 16%. It was pitifully low. Even so, he had to record it down. Luo Nan opened the flexible e-ink screen and recorded the data. Basically, he treated the paper men as this week's homework. He was going to give them to Papercut to look over later. He felt that these paper men were quite different from the works he made when he first started learning. At the very least, the way they were cut was quite cool. Luo Nan put away his pen and blew away the ashes stuck between his fingers. He blinked his eyes, but he felt his eyes become a bit dry. He closed his eyes and looked within himself. He saw that the glow of the heart lantern was quite weak. It was even weaker than it was before he received the blessing. Luo Nan was not surprised. He was still a novice when it came to soul strength activation. He was far from being precise. He had clearly used too much strength this time. The consumption was too great. He wasn't in a hurry to recover, because he would need to transport his soul strength out of the My Heart's a Prison format if he did so. The external neuron might give him a fierce blow. It really wasn't worth it. He allowed the vitality of his body to naturally nourish and recover. Although it took a long time, it was stable. It could be said that he had a degree of relaxation. In the front seat of the sightseeing bus, Xie Junping spoke of the blood peony. Oh, he spoke of gear. He was still in high spirits. A woman as powerful as Tang, he needs someone even more powerful to conquer her. Otherwise, she needs to do what she likes. Nanster, you really don't lose out. You can tell that she's a great beauty just by looking at her nickname. Today is the 25th. The 30th is Monday's gear auction. Time is tight, and the task is heavy. I can't drag this out any longer. Luonan raised his leg and kicked the front seat, giving Xie Junping a warning. Then he changed the topic to a normal direction. Do you have any idea of the base price for both sides? There is no definite news at the moment, only rumors. Xie Junping shrugged his shoulders. Sissy Du's face is covered in dirt, and he's been kicked out of his house. His connections in the society have been cut off by quite a bit. He only mentioned it briefly, saying that the backer behind the Mystic Arts Research Society wants to cooperate with the Construction Society. Cooperation? That's impossible, right? Luo Nan was quite surprised. Wasn't the Order of Justice behind the Mystic Arts Research Institute? Behind the Construction Society was the Rainbow Fund, which was equivalent to Quantum Corporation. What was the point of putting these two families together? Isn't capital something that can change at will? However, it was rumored that the main reason was because the Mystic Arts Research Society had changed their financial backer. It used to be a religious group, but now it had changed to a research fund. It was quite famous. Oh, I mean in our circle, LCREF. Life Cycle Research Fund. Hey, you've heard of it? Xie Junping was very surprised and turned to look at him. I thought you didn't care about these things. I just heard about it. In the next 2 days. Luo Nan spent most of his energy on the heart lantern of the eye's orifice over the past 10 days. But the training courses arranged for him by the society were still ongoing. Aside from Crag Burst and Red Fox's practical courses, several courses had to be adjusted back due to interference power. Luo Nan also persisted in studying the related theories of the Soul Strength Activation Techniques course. He would occasionally do experiments to adjust. Otherwise, the small paper man in his notebook would not exist. Luo Nan's reaction to the information about the Life Cycle Research Fund was lightning fast. This was because the fund was mentioned in He Yuan's World Order inside and outside the Psychic Wave Network and Bamboo Poles, notes on major characters of the world. On the surface, it was funded and established by a few top tycoons. Its main investment direction was the classical direction of human life extension. It was an important investment fund in the field of biology, and it was a large financial backer of many important biological laboratories. However, the fund had close ties with the political and military circles of the inner world. It was practically an open secret. The fund also cooperated with various powers of the inner world. Many important projects were listed there, including the Frost River Waterway, which Luo Nan was very familiar with. Strange. Luo Nan raised his head and leaned against the back of his chair. He stared blankly at the sky. The Life Fund, Quantum Corporation, and the previous order are all interested in gear. Why? He asked himself this question, not expecting to receive an answer. He never expected that Xie Junping would immediately follow up. Sissy Du said that gear's architectural structure is very suitable for carrying out mysterious rituals. In the past, the Order Club was also known as the Ritual Society by people in the circle. Acumen College's fraternity and sorority societies have held initiation ceremonies here several times. They even had drug parties and the like. It's said that the effects here are much stronger than outside. Xie Junping had been speaking casually, but he turned his head and saw Luo Nan frown. He hurriedly stopped talking, But after a long while he couldn't help but say, "It's me. I also think it's a bit interesting. It's especially comfortable over there. My brain works fast, and my eyes and ears are sharp. Also, sometimes I can see things even without opening my eyes. Transparent. Nanster, tell me, am I going to rush toward superpowers?" Luo Nan was speechless. He didn't know how to respond. Xie Juanping's interest was piqued. "I didn't realize it before, but I've been interacting with Sissy Du these past few days. He's really an interesting fellow. His stomach is filled with goods, and the fields he's come into contact with are very diverse and very interesting. Oh right, are you two free on Sunday?" Sissy Du said that there's some Starry Sky Club that holds a mystic arts salon every Sunday. There are many people with abilities inside. It's very interesting. How about we go take a look? I don't understand anything about the mystic arts. Shuele responded awkwardly. His horizons had been greatly broadened during this time. His understanding of the inner world grew deeper and deeper. He was already pondering about joining the Wilderness Explorers Society. How could he possibly go to that completely unreliable so-called mystic arts salon? "Nanster? I've already contacted them on Sunday. I'm going to send them over for repair." Luo Nan also declined the invitation. And this was the truth. He really was going to the repair center. Xie Junping was a bit disappointed. "Then forget it. I wanted you guys to help me take a look." "Cough, I was just saying." Shuele turned to look at Luo Nan. His eyes probably said, "This bro doesn't know anything?" Luo Nan shook his head slightly. Xie Junping certainly knew that Luo Nan possessed a certain superpower. Xie Junping was quite reverent towards this. And he was also a bit curious. Luo Nan didn't take the initiative to talk about it. After all, there were differences in their circles. It was hard to understand without personal experience. It would only cause confusion in one's heart. But thinking deeper, Xie Junping had a place in the format pyramid. Xie Junping was a believer, even if he was a level 1 apprentice, and the strict rules of the format pyramid could still affect him. Luo Nan thought about his own hardships, and felt that he really needed to carefully examine Xie Junping when he had the time. This was to prevent this friend of his from receiving any negative impacts. Now wasn't the best time to discuss this sort of thing. Luo Nan's thoughts spun, and he thought of something else. He said to Shuele, "Did you bring that thing over?" The topic changed too quickly. Shuele didn't react for a time. "What?" "The mechanical device inside the Tai Chi ball. It needs to be repaired." Luo Nan was speechless towards Shuele. "I told you 2 days ago. Bamboo Pole introduced me to a very powerful mechanic." "Ah, I brought it over. I brought it over." Shuele patted his head and reached his hand into his pocket. He felt empty, and this big guy could only laugh awkwardly. "I stuffed it into the locker this morning. I forgot to take it out. Should I go get it now?" "Forget it. You can give it to me tomorrow morning." Though Xie Junping didn't understand what the two were talking about, he looked all around and said, "Is the main locker room in the South 2 district? We're in the South 1 district. It's not that far. There's no harm in going over. Let's change hands early, so that we don't forget tomorrow. Your memory has been like that for the past few days." "That's fine." Luo Nan and Shuele both agreed. But after a brief pause, Luo Nan found Xie Junping's words strange. "What's wrong with my memory?" Xie Junping made a U-turn as he chuckled. "I told you a long time ago that Jim Archbishop Xiu's disciple has amazing abilities. Bring me to pay my respects and learn some kung fu. Neither of you remember." The two, who had been rebuked, glanced at each other. They were both a bit embarrassed. Actually, it wasn't that their memories were bad. It was just that after Shuele mentioned it, Xiu Xinyu had rejected him with a single word. There was no room for discussion. Xiu Xinyu's straightforward attitude made Luo Nan feel a bit overwhelmed by the favor. That's right. This was the feeling. Why did Gym Master Xiu agree to teach him kung fu so easily back then? The sightseeing bus stopped outside the main locker room, amidst the stuttering responses of the two ability users. Shuele hurriedly got off the bus to retrieve the item. Luo Nan and Xie Junping chatted here and there, but the topic of gear never strayed away. Halfway there, Luo Nan subconsciously turned on his flexible e-ink screen. He used his status as a member of the society to pull out the architectural blueprints and other information from the internet. He looked at the intertwining gears of different sizes. It was both creative and had a strict and unique aesthetic. In the end, Luonan cared quite a bit. If it was just the Rainbow Fund, Luonan could more or less understand. After all, Yin Yongbo was the leader. Yin Yongbo certainly wanted to seize back the laboratory and clear the name of his deceitful father. However, whether it was the Life Cycle Research Fund or the Order of Justice, they all more or less paid attention to gear. Was it just because of the mysterious ritual? Looking back, what was his mother's goal in designing and building gear? Was it just like the information said? Was it her graduation work, of pure architectural art? Was it that simple? Luonan looked at the image of a refreshing woman on the information file, and his mind was in a trance. He stared blankly, until Xie Junping snapped his fingers in a flirtatious manner and called out, "Beauty, a chance encounter is better than a chance encounter. Want to hitch a ride?" Luonan raised his head, and saw a figure walk out from the main locker room. It wasn't Shuelei. It was just as Xie Junping said. It was a beauty above average. Chapter 290. Hearing Xie Junping's roguish voice, the woman who just walked out of the hall raised her head. Her gaze was quite calm, and she even revealed a slight smile. "Hello, head Xie." This simple greeting turned Xie Junping's attempt to strike up a conversation into nothingness. Luonan finally confirmed this person's identity. "Senior Sister Tian?" The woman turned to look at him, and her face revealed astonishment. "Junior Nan, are you feeling better?" This calm woman was none other than Tian Si. Half a month ago, Luonan and the others had come to Frost River Reality because of her and Mo Chiu, the third brother of the Mo family's get-together. Luonan caused such a huge commotion. Luonan didn't blame her. He just felt a bit emotional. Mo Chiu and Tian Si seemed to see eye to eye at the time, but there was no news of them afterwards. Tian Si brought her displeased cousin to visit Luonan during the few days he was hospitalized. She didn't lack etiquette, and it gave people a good impression of her. From the perspective of a relative of the Mo family, it was quite a pity. Today, Tian Si wore a slim turtleneck sweater paired with a velvet skirt. It set off her small face the size of a palm, and it made her petite figure appear longer. She looked all the more refined and gentle. It was no wonder that Xie Junping took liberties with her upon seeing her. Speaking of which, the two of them were both members of the student organization. Their relationship with each other far surpassed Luonan's. "You're also a department head, and I'm also a department head. We're a perfect match." Xie Junping still had a mischievous smile on his face. He jumped out of the car and gestured with his hand. He acted like an experienced driver. "I've been wanting to lead Minister Tian's horse for a long time. Give me a chance today. Don't refuse. I know where you're going. Cloud City Water Village, right? With Minister Tian at the party, the attraction is complete. Don't you think so, Nanster?" Luonan also jumped out of the car and glared at him. Xie Junping was still a bit afraid of him. His neck instinctively shrunk back. Tian Si smiled faintly. "I'm just going to make up the numbers. Don't overestimate me, Master Xie." "Oh right, Junior Nan. I heard from Tian Chi that quite a few people have mentioned you in the past few days. Your name is getting bigger and bigger." She was all smiles from beginning to end. It was as if she was chatting about family matters, but the meaning behind it was a bit subtle. Luonan and Xie Junping were both stupefied. Shuelei just so happened to rush out at this time. He saw the three chatting, and his footsteps slowed down. On the night of Frost River Reality, Tian Si and Shuelei did not meet face to face. However, when she saw this situation, she knew that they were together. She immediately took half a step back. "Young Master Xie, Junior Brother Luo, you two go first. I already have a date. I'm going with someone." "No way." Xie Junping was truly immersed in his role. He even forgot Luonan's silent warning. His face was like a bolt from the blue. "You have an appointment? As a female companion?" Tian Si thought for a moment, then pursed her lips and smiled. "Yes, a female companion." No matter how unwilling Xie Junping was, he didn't want to continue pestering her. He could only sigh and bid farewell before driving the sightseeing bus away. When he turned the corner, he glanced back and chuckled. This person is really powerful. Luonan grunted. There was a mature and mellow soul within Tianxi's petite body. Xie Juanping's eyes weren't bad, but this fellow couldn't keep up his airs. He sighed in the blink of an eye. Chen Weiken hasn't been able to get his hands on her after so many years at school. I don't know who's the lucky one this time. Luonan gave the driver's seat a light kick. Drive properly. Shuelei snorted. Chen Weiken. The cause of his relationship with Chen Xiaolin being ruined was his attitude toward Chen Weiken back at the Limestone Water Village pub. Naturally, he didn't have any good feelings toward the vice president of the student council. Especially 10 minutes later, when the bus drove past the Limestone Water Village pub. Shuelei returned to his old place, and his mood became even worse. Luckily, the location of the party wasn't set there. Cloud City Water Village had plenty of places to arrange similar group activities. In the Pingjiang district, where the height of the buildings was relatively low, Cloud City Water Village, this super large compound building complex, was undoubtedly the most outstanding and the most eye-catching one. The main body of the compound complex was still around 15 kilometers away from Acumen College, but the derivative building area already bordered the campus. With its prosperity, it attracted tens of thousands of students and teachers. They spent their time there, lingering on and forgetting to return. This was the origin of the name Acumen College's large living area. In fact, Cloud City Water Village used the same method to realize the connection with two other famous high schools in the district. And within its enormous structure was Xia City's top business college and private high school. The participants of this party came from the 5 schools covered by Cloud City Water Village. A total of 500 people were gathered. It was already a medium to large-scale party, and it was quite formal. Before arriving at the venue, Luonan and the others had to follow the requirements of the party and change their clothes. This is quite troublesome. Also, what the hell is this? Luonan shook his white coat, which was clearly a size too big, in the luxurious suite reserved by Tyrant Xia. He had a baffled expression. It's work clothes. If you want to pretend to be a doctor, then pretend to be a doctor. If you want to pretend to be a Frankenstein, then pretend to be a Frankenstein. Oh, I even prepared sterile gloves. Do you want to wear them? Xie Junping waved the gloves in front of Luonan's eyes. He was grinning from ear to ear. Luonan slapped the gloves away in a bad mood and asked, "What kind of party is this? Why is it so fancy?" "Ha! I sent you the electronic invitation. Didn't you see it?" Luonan was speechless. He had been pouring his heart and soul into cultivating in the eye's orifice during this period of time. The little spare time he had was packed to the brim by the society's training. He didn't have the mental energy to care about anything else. The matter of the party was completely arranged by Xie Junping. Right now, the electronic invitation was still in an unread state in his inbox. Xie Junping chuckled. Then do it at the last minute. It's written very clearly on it. If you don't read it, don't blame me if you make a fool of yourself later. Luonan rolled his eyes and immediately opened the invitation from his wristband. Sure enough, the introduction was very clear. This party was of the role-playing type. Every participant had to prepare attire for a profession in society. It would be best if the attire was related to their profession and specialty. There were thousands of professions in society, but there were far fewer who had the corresponding attire with distinct characteristics. There would certainly be repetitions. The theme of today's party was called Mutual Appreciation. The invitation said that there would be interactions between people of the same profession who were role-playing. The wording was mysterious and not too serious. Luonan scratched his head when he saw this. He had been a nerd for many years. He was most afraid of this sort of bustle. He felt uncomfortable no matter what. Also, what kind of vile hobby did Xie Junping have? Why did he make him look like a doctor or a Frankenstein? He laughed and said, "It's a good thing I read it early. I don't need to make any special preparations." The angle he was role-playing today was that of a martial artist. It was his true self. He wore the Taoist uniform of Divine Yu Gym every day. His appearance didn't change at all. It was said that this was to advertise the Taoist gym. Being old for so long had become a habit. Even though the Taoist gym no longer recruited students, he didn't change his clothes. He was the most worry-free one. As for Xie Junping, he was the most normal. He wore formal attire, and he had added a layer of sequins to it. It was quite eye-catching. Luo Nan was both amazed and dissatisfied. Why are you wearing formal attire? I'm also a character. What do you think? My true nature is to be dissolute, rich and carefree. Xie Junping laughed and pushed Luo Nan and Shui Lei out. They headed to the venue together. Luo Nan shook his white coat. He felt awkward no matter how he looked at it, but a certain someone was waving gloves in front of his eyes. Dr. Luo, you really don't need it. Call me Dr. Luo. Luo Nan replied hatefully. Then he snatched the gloves from Xie Junping and stuffed them into his pocket. He couldn't help but laugh to himself. It had been a long time since he had felt this relaxed. They were currently in the Ocean Sky Cloud City building. This was the fourth of the 6 buildings in Cloud City Water Village that were distributed in a circular staircase fashion. The first 3 buildings had the name of Water Village. Starting from this building, the 2 words Cloud City were hung in the building's name. The building's height rose correspondingly. Of course, the prices of the various services were the same. Shui Lei grimaced at the exquisite and luxurious furnishings along the way as he walked on the road to the party venue. A cold and gorgeous deep blue light assaulted his face the instant he stepped into the main venue. He exclaimed in surprise, "Good heavens! My goodness, this is the Crystal Palace?" The first impression that the main venue gave people was that of rippling waves. The enormous amount of seawater was sealed by a transparent crystal wall. Under the illumination of the lights, it presented the near-perfect texture of the ocean, as one would expect. Actually, this scene could be seen in any modern marine park or underwater world. It wasn't strange at all, but one just had to think about it. This was the interior of an 800-meter-tall skyscraper. The seawater flowed from top to bottom, through the entire structure. It was stored in the walls and flowed within the pillars. Tens of millions of tons of seawater were displayed in such a regular and willful manner. Of course, there were millions of sea creatures, from tiny scallops to enormous blue whales. They collectively constructed a complete and twisted chain of life. Right now, the participants of the party were all distributed on the circular viewing platform built around the Central Ocean Scenic Area. Several hundred people were quite a lot, but compared to the 120-meter diameter crystal pillar, which was as tall as the building itself, it really wasn't much. This world-breaking water tank was erected, filled with seawater, and maintained the highest level of safety protection. This achievement could be called a monumental monument in the field of applied physics. Cloud City Water Village's building complex was completely formed 4 years ago. Ocean Sky Cloud City was the last to be built. It was built about a year later than the main building. It could be seen just how difficult the construction was. Luo Nan had come here twice with his aunt's family. It wasn't his first time seeing it, so he felt a bit weaker. But he never got tired of looking at the beautiful sea creatures inside. The 3 of them didn't speak for a while until someone called out to them. "Brother Ping, you guys came pretty late." Hu Huaying, who was in charge of the advance party, had arrived long ago. She popped out of nowhere. Today's party was a get-together initiated by the student unions of 5 schools. Each school only had 100 spots. It was a fairly high-end gathering. Chapter 291. Compared to Xie Junping, who had no sincerity in acting, Hu Huaying at least had a bit of performance. He wore Western cowboy attire with a crooked cowboy hat. Upon closer inspection, the hat was actually made of paper. It was funny and casual. Seeing Luo Nan and the others focus their gazes on his head, Hu Huaying shook his head rather proudly. "I'm okay, right?" Luo Nan's hatred had yet to dissipate. He sneered. Much better than a certain cowherd. It was easy to tell who the cowherd was just by looking at their outfits. Xie Junping opened his mouth but was unable to speak. He could only shrug. Hu Huaying stifled her laughter. She slightly lifted the brim of her hat and bowed in thanks. The appointed cowherd said unhappily, "Don't talk nonsense." "Are you sure?" Hu Huaying answered. "The blood peony will definitely participate." "What occupation? What about attire?" "Who knows? Just look at her height. She's a 185-centimeter beauty. Wouldn't she stand out like a crane in a flock of chickens? The two members of the student council discussed the details. Shuelei turned to ask the more trustworthy person, Nanster? Luonan shook his head slightly. His face faced the central crystal pillar. He was a bit lost in thought. Luonan was an expert among experts when it came to finding people. He slightly released his mental senses and swept across the 3 levels of the platform. However, he didn't find the person described by Hu Huaying. Instead, there was a clear feeling of obstruction when his soul strength cut through the crystal pillar. He changed frequency 6 or 7 times in a row before finding the right method to send the psychic waves into the sealed seawater. Aside from this, there were no abnormalities. Luonan first cursed himself for being stupid. It was impossible for the blood peony to be hidden in the seawater. Why did he do such a meaningless thing? But his thoughts moved again, and he suddenly realized something. This crystal wall could actually isolate a considerable portion of the psychic wave transmission. The material. No, there were traces of mutual interference between the mental and material planes. It was more like a blessing. A blessing? Luonan raised his head and looked up. He couldn't see the top of the crystal pillar. He looked down and couldn't see the bottom either. A blessing with this volume? His chain of logic collapsed just like that. Xie Junping mumbled to the side. It shouldn't be here yet. Then let's wait a bit longer. And we can't make it too obvious. We have to be a bit more natural. That person isn't easy to deal with. Hu Huaying also said, it's strange. Tang Yi will graduate next year. She doesn't seem to be preparing to continue her studies. What can he do by taking over the president's position? No one can guess that person's thoughts. If you could guess it, why would you need to come looking for me? Tidying up his sequined suit, Xie Junping sighed. If we can't find him, then let's not look for him. It might not be reasonable to deal with him directly. Let's use a roundabout way to save the country. Let's go find the master first and use him as a middleman. Shuelei didn't understand. What's the host of the 5 schools fellowship? Somebody has to provide the space. In Ocean Sky Cloud City, the Yao family is a major shareholder. Their family's 4th young master, Yao Feng, is in Cloud City's business school. Today, he booked the entire 3rd level of the platform. Xie Junping explained a few words, then grinned and said, the Yao family used to be on the road, and they also traveled by sea. Their hands are quite unscrupulous, but Yao Feng is a good person. What's even better is that his family seems to be related to Tang Yi. You have a stake in it, right? Hu Huaying corrected. There's even a rumor that he's a mistress of his grandfather. Anyway, he has a bit of a friendship with him. Xie Junping's voice lowered a bit. It was more or less taboo. He immediately shifted his gaze to a different angle. I say that the key lies with Leicester this time. Shuelei blinked his eyes and pointed at his own nose. Me. That's you. Xie Junping reached out and wrapped his arm around Shuelei's thick shoulders. He gave Shuelei face to face and said, Yao Feng is a very fanatical fighter. Of course he has high standards but low ability. But when we talk about some professional stuff, the results will certainly be quite good. Hu Huaying added, Tang Yi is a fighter herself. Many people say this. Xie Junping made the decision. So today we'll start with martial arts. Leicester, we're relying on you. This is fine. How about we stop talking about it? Shuelei was far more cheerful than Luonan. But the 2 brothers were more or less the same when it came to dealing with people. Shuelei thought of the burden on his shoulders and felt a bit apprehensive for a time. Xie Junping never expected that this big and tall brother would actually want to run away at the last minute. He was exasperated at Shuelei's failure to meet his expectations. What the hell are you nervous about? This is a social party. It's actually very simple on the student level. It's nothing more than finding an excuse to relax. The venue, the drinks, the beauties, the handsome men, and the unspeakable things. Are you afraid that Tang Yi will take a fancy to you? So what if she takes a fancy to you? Don't tell me you're training in the Virgin Arts. You're the one who's training in the Virgin Arts. Shuelei's voice rose by a notch, but then he felt weak. You guys are all playing this crazy. Everyone has their own choices. Only by participating in these kinds of activities can you find your position. You know who you can cooperate with in the future. You know who you can use. You know who you can sell. You know who you need to hide far away. Xie Junping was deep in thought. He looked at Shui Lei's expression and spat out a mouthful of spittle. You really believe that? A bunch of students. Students. Who doesn't play a little bit first? If you don't like it, then you fight. If you do like it, then you fight. If you do like it, then you make friends. Everything is easy to talk about. Besides, we're just preparing for a rainy day. We don't need to look at Tang Yi's mood. We're just giving her face. Let's go. Xie Junping dragged Shui Lei along as the group walked in circles around the viewing platform. After a few turns, they arrived at a semi-open bar in the corner. There was a circle of sofas here. There were no lights. Only a faint blue glow spilled out from the world's #1 cylindrical water tank. 7 people sat on the sofa. 4 men and 3 women. I found the main character. Xie Junping spoke in a low voice. Then he strode forward to the outside of the circular sofa. He slapped the back of the sofa, scaring the person closest to him. When he turned his head to look, he laughed and cursed. This was how they got into a conversation. Luonan naturally used his mental senses to distinguish them, due to the dusky lighting, and the fact that he was cultivating in the eye's orifice. Soon, he felt that aside from Yao Feng, who was talking to Xie Junping, the 3 men in the group of 6 were quite eye-catching. 2 of them were relatively young. They were around 20 years old. There was another person who was a bit older. He was around 30 years old. This age was already beyond the norm for this party. Xie Junping began to introduce them. Oh, they're all best buddies who came together to play. Shui Lei, a young martial artist. He's first-rate. You know Frost River Reality, right? That place on Fudong Main Street. Leister was one of the last people to withdraw. Luonan, one of the last people to withdraw. He's an extremely outstanding psychologist. He's also my savior. Luonan listened with complex emotions. It was rare for Xie Junping to think of these words to brag to the 2 of them. But what the hell was a psychologist? On the other side, Yao Feng was muttering to himself. Why did Xie Junping, who always brought a sexy female companion, suddenly change? But his attitude was still very cordial. He took the initiative to stick his wristbands together and exchange contact information. In the end, Yao Feng turned his head to introduce Luonan to the people on this side. It was at this time that someone spoke. Frost River Reality? That's interesting. My sister is stingy. No one can give me a proper explanation for that mess. Why don't you guys give me a proper explanation? The person who spoke was one of the 3 men Luonan had paid attention to. He sat in the innermost position and wore a military uniform. It was true that being a soldier was a profession, but it was unavoidable that an ordinary person would be suspected of breaking the law if they wore it. This person didn't sit properly. His arms were resting on the back of the sofa, taking up quite a bit of space. He had a sloppy appearance. Xie Junping was displeased to see such a tone. He had always been the one to display it for others to see. When had he ever enjoyed it himself? Xie Junping could feel the arrogance in the other's words. His heart became angry, but Hu Huaying lightly tapped him in the ribs. There was also Yao Feng. He used the dusky lighting to fiercely signal Xie Junping with his eyes. Xie Junping didn't drink alcohol or take drugs. His mind was still clear. His heart skipped a beat. He swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. Yao Feng seized the moment of silence and rushed to introduce him. Come. Let's get to know each other first. I'll introduce you guys. He Donglu. The soldier inside raised his hand. It was as if he was signing up. His voice was cheerful. He's just an outsider. He came to join in the fun. Xie Junping's mind spun in a circle. He really didn't know where this immortal came from. However, this person didn't look deep. Xie Junping could roughly guess his temperament. He was a silk pants. A big silk pants. Like repels like. Xie Junping just couldn't find this fellow pleasing to the eye. At this time, Hu Huaying moved closer and whispered into his ear. Empty sky he. It was only 3 words, but the meaning behind them was truly terrifying. Xie Junping screamed in his mind. Fuck me. He immediately admitted defeat. He was worried that Luonan and Shui Lei wouldn't be able to handle the situation well. He rushed to put on a sea-style attitude and laughed. What outsider? There are no outsiders here. We'll get to know each other from here. My surname is Xie Junping. I'm just a bored idler. His fingers streaked across Luo Nan and Xue Lei before landing on Hu Huaying. I've introduced these two. There's also my other best friend, Hu Huaying, who old third. He's a large farm owner. I feel that his family's farm will be opened into the wilderness sooner or later. Xie Junping wanted to blur the focus and skip the problem of Frost River reality. Yao Feng was very cooperative. He said with a beaming smile, Third's family raises cattle. My family raises fish. We're all friends of the older generation. Hu Huaying raised her paper hat in greeting. He Donglu laughed very happily from the seat inside the ring-shaped sofa. It really is a coincidence. We can all match up. We also have a martial artist here. We also have an old driver. Huh. How would a doctor and a driver match up? This bro's train of thought was too jumpy. The group of people were a bit stupefied. Yao Feng was the first to recover. He hurriedly changed the topic. Let me introduce you. This is Feng Jiejun, Instructor Feng. He's the youngest high-level instructor of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. He should be in the same circle as Xue Lei. It's a good opportunity to get closer. We'll interact in a bit. Maybe we'll even work together. Feng Jiejun was only in his early 20s. He was older than Xue Lei by 5 or 6 years. But he was already very young. Compared to Xue Lei, he was a bit thinner and a bit more handsome. He was the type that was very popular with girls. Xue Lei. He should be a rising star in the circle. Let's get to know each other. Chapter 292. Feng Jiejun's eyelids drooped slightly, but the smile on his face became much clearer. Coach Xue. Xue Lei said modestly, Not at all. I'm at most an assistant instructor in the dojo. I haven't finished my apprenticeship yet. Is that so? Which dojo is it? Xue Lei wouldn't let go of any opportunity to make the dojo famous. He immediately enunciated clearly, Riverwu District Divine Yu Dojo. The dojo master's family is surnamed Xiao? Feng Jiejun grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. I've heard a lot about you. Xue Lei was startled and then delighted. Coach Feng, you know our dojo master? Of course I know him. He's a divine fish after all. He's famous. The word fish was especially long. No matter how straightforward Xue Lei was, he still felt something was wrong. He looked again at Feng Jiejun, who was smiling and extending his hand. We should also get to know each other. In the martial arts circle, shaking hands wasn't a good thing. Want to shake hands? Xue Lei hesitated slightly, but seeing the other party's resolute attitude, he curled his lips and also extended his hand. The two shook hands. He then heard Feng Jiejun continue. I've heard of Dojo Master Xiao's great name for a long time. After all, it's rare to see someone who can open a fish dojo in Boshan building for 10 years. It's said that he'll be moving soon. Feng Jiejun wanted to display his relaxed attitude and speak fluently, but at the last moment he suddenly choked. Xue Lei raised his thick eyebrows. A teeth-numbing screeching sound came from where the two shook hands. Then there was a light explosion, like a slightly deflated balloon being burst. At this moment, Feng Jiejun's palm was like a spirit snake. He withdrew from Xue Lei's 5 fingers, but his body unconsciously leaned back, stiffening for a moment before straightening again. He lowered his head to look at his own palm. His expression darkened, and the corner of his mouth twitched before recovering his smile. Your strength is polished quite well. Oh, enemies meet on a narrow road? He Donglu sat up a bit, and withdrew his arm from the back of the sofa. His palms banged against his abdomen, and he even rubbed them a couple of times. He had the attitude of watching a good show. What you said wasn't wrong. But was it really good to say it directly? Even Xie Junping had to concede defeat to He Donglu's silk pants ability. He thought to himself, if I don't drink and take pills, I'm afraid I won't be able to beat him. Yao Feng felt that he had suffered an unexpected disaster. But he couldn't vent his anger. He could only rack his brains to persuade him. It's common sense to spar in martial arts. But if you come too early, the later programs will be boring. Young Master He? You're right. He Donglu readily accepted advice. He appeared to be quite easy to talk to, but once he opened his mouth, It was somewhat like his words were made of gold and jade. Feng Jiejun frowned slightly, and finally took a step back. However, Shuelei wouldn't let him off so easily. He glared angrily at Feng Jiejun. Seeing this, Feng Jiejun's eyes darkened. Upon seeing the situation, he Donglu laughed. Don't be anxious. Didn't you hear that there will be another program later? When the time comes, I'll give you a share. Sigh, I've been waiting for so long. Old Yao, where's your family's greatest treasure? Yao Feng looked down at his wristband and forced a smile. We're almost there. He gave Xie Junping a meaningful glance as he spoke. Xie Junping understood tacitly and suppressed the unhappiness in his heart. He chuckled. Young master, go ahead and play. We'll walk around a bit more. He Donglu pointed at him with his hand. Don't forget about the program. Program my ass. Xie Junping cursed in his mind. If he were to talk with Yao Feng for a while longer in this situation, Yao Feng would probably cry. He definitely wouldn't be in the mood to help them hook up with Tang Yi. From this, it could be seen that their primary goal in participating in this party was most likely to fail. He and Hu Huaying dragged Luo Nan and Shuelei away. Shuelei hadn't said a single word ever since he grabbed Xie Junping's hand. His expression was solemn, and his anger had yet to dissipate. He was pulled a few steps away by Hu Huaying, and then he turned his head to look back. Feng Jiejun didn't respond. It looked like he was on the phone. Luo Nan watched the entire exchange from beginning to end. He completely became a spectator. Whether it was smart or clumsy, the way these second generations dealt with each other was not his domain of expertise. He had no interest whatsoever. Only Feng Jiejun's matter was baffling. It even involved Xiao Xinyu and his Daoguan. Luo Nan had no choice but to worry. His thoughts stirred slightly, and Feng Jiejun's words from a dozen meters away, including the general response from the other side, were all captured by his mental senses and transmitted back to him. Shuelei's expression was still quite ugly. He found it hard to calm his anger. This Feng fellow is really baffling. Did our Daoguan provoke him? Is Boshan manner a hindrance to him? Luo Nan responded casually as he monitored the situation over there. It's hard to say. Huh? You're saying? Shuelei wasn't stupid. Once he confirmed the key elements, he followed the vines to the melon. He soon pulled out a chain of clues. The meaning behind this Feng fellow's words is that he's jealous that our Daoguan is at Boshan building? The Thunder Falcon Dojo is a big business. It wouldn't go so far as to. Could it be that he lost a bet back then and wants to get back at us? That's about it. Luo Nan remembered Shuelei mentioning something. Back when Xiao Xinyu settled down in Xia City, he made a bet with someone and won the right to use the Daoguan's grounds for 10 years. Feng Jiejun had mentioned words like 10 years and moving away when he was talking to Shuelei. Luo Nan compared this to the information revealed in the conversation, and the situation became clearer. Shuelei spat. The Daoguan is about to move away before coming. What were you doing 10 years ago? This won't do. Nanster, I'm going to make a call. Contact the gym master? Yes. The gym master never mentions these things, but he's about to provoke us. We can't muddle through it. Luo Nan stared at him. Be patient when you ask. Tell me later. Shuelei nodded. He found a secluded place and contacted the Daoguan. Since Xiao Xinyu usually didn't carry electronic devices, the call was a bit more troublesome. Luo Nan looked at Shuelei's actions and subconsciously shook his head. I might not be able to get the answer. I need to go through other channels. From Luo Nan's understanding of Gym Master Xiao was truly a man of few words. As long as Gym Master Xiao didn't want to talk, no matter how Shuelei pestered him, Gym Master Xiao wouldn't get any answers. Luo Nan wanted to find more channels to gather information in order to prevent the Gym Master from being stubborn. His best choice in Xia City was undoubtedly the Explorers Society. The society was able to absorb a powerful martial artist like Mr. Giant Arm presumably. The society should have a good understanding of the matters of the circle. Luo Nan pressed his earlobe out of habit. He had just logged onto the psychic wave network, but he was unable to find anyone. A small portion of the deep blue light in the environment was suddenly blocked by shadows. The remaining light shook violently. Some sort of oppressive factor caused the nearby people to instinctively turn their heads. Their gazes turned in the direction of the central crystal pillar. An enormous and flat ferocious monster, with a diameter of over 15 meters, could be seen near the inner wall of the crystal pillar. It was like an aircraft gliding at high speed. In the blink of an eye, it crossed dozens of meters of water. It rushed to the edge of the crystal pillar and fiercely collided with it. Its momentum was astonishing. The collision momentum of such an enormous monster was enough to shake one's soul, even though they were separated by the crystal wall. Some of the partygoers had been sticking close to the crystal pillar to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the seabed. Who would have thought that the scene would suddenly change? They instinctively cried out in fear and retreated in panic. There were even some unlucky souls who tripped and fell on their butts, making a fool of themselves. The monster, which looked more like a bat than a fish, suddenly rose up when it saw that it was about to collide head-on. Its deathly pale belly practically stuck to the inner wall of the crystal pillar as it climbed up at high speed. It displayed its astonishing wingspan in the most direct way possible, as well as the rows of malevolent mouthparts on both sides of its belly. Oh, and of course, one couldn't forget its slender tail that was 10 meters long. The tail was densely covered in blue and black scales. It was like an ironclad whip, and fine sparks of electricity even leaped and flowed on it. Its enormous body, powerful mobility, strange body composition. All sorts of elements formed the image of a terrifying monster fish, but this fellow didn't give up. After sticking close to the inner wall of the crystal pillar and climbing a certain distance, it fiercely flipped backwards. At the same time, it rapidly spun around the central axis of its body. Everywhere it passed, the seawater would swirl. The rapidly spinning waves were actually as sharp as swords. Everywhere it passed, fish and prawns, big and small, would be minced into pieces and then sucked into the mouthparts on its belly. The seawater that was originally clear and limpid instantly became muddy and bloody. The terrifying monster fish broke through the limits of a normal person's line of sight in the muddy whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. Even though the participants were elites from first-rate schools, the majority of them couldn't help but be stupefied on the spot after suddenly witnessing such a bloody scene. They were speechless for a long time. However, there were also a small number of people who were either prepared or had a different temperament. They were still able to face it calmly. There were even more people who laughed loudly in excitement. Hidonglu was the one who laughed the loudest. Even separated by over 10 meters, his laughter could be heard. This bastard is a mutant without a doubt. At the very least, it's a second class. It's rare that its wild nature hasn't been eliminated. Yet you guys were still able to capture it. Such a malevolent and terrifying monster fish had already far exceeded the limits of what a normal biological system could contain. It was indeed a mutant species. Professionals who were familiar with the mutant genealogy could see that this monster fish should have mutated from a manta ray, the devil ray that people often referred to as a foundation. A normal manta ray was an ancient and gentle species. It had already lived on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. Its offensive capabilities weren't strong. It was only because of its robust body and its monstrous appearance that it received the name Devil Ray. However, under the effects of mutant, the monster fish within the crystal pillar had already become a devil in name and in reality. Especially the scene of indiscriminate slaughter before it left caused people to tremble with fear. Xie Jinping had just suffered quite a bit of fright, so much so that he bit his own cheek. His mood was even worse. He couldn't help but curse. Yao Si doesn't want to do business anymore. Releasing this thing. Halfway through his words, he saw that Luo Nan and the others were looking behind him. He immediately turned around and saw Yao Feng with an ugly expression. Xie Jinping didn't feel embarrassed at all. He just laughed and said, "What's wrong? The young master of the He family isn't going to serve you anymore?" Yao Feng instinctively shot a glance behind him when he heard this, but he felt that his actions were too embarrassing. He waved his hand and laughed bitterly. "I won't be serving you for now. I'll hide for now. Rely on the mountain to survive. Rely on the sea to survive. You guys are a black-hearted drug dealer and a large farm owner. We don't need to pay attention to you guys. But we make a living on the sea. How can we bypass the coastal defense forces? Bypass this family? We have to curry favor with them. Chapter 293. Oh, which one? Luo Nan's mind turned, but he saw a number he had never seen before. He was inevitably surprised. Just as he was about to answer the call, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He switched to the settings interface, and sure enough, he had already set the restricted communication mode. In this mode, other than the people he had added to his contact list, no one else could communicate with him. They could only leave messages. The reason for this was Yuan's suggestion. It was said that it could minimize distractions and focus on cultivation. So the question was, how did this number get in? Luo Nan was also curious as to who was talking to him. He was just about to connect when the other party's communication request was cut off. He waited for a while, but there was no follow-up. When he called back, the system showed, "Contact is limited, please leave a message." Alright, what's with this kind of low-level malfunction? It had been more than 10 days, and the debugging of the psychic wave network still hadn't ended? Luo Nan shook his head and cast this matter aside for now. He shifted the focus of his attention back to Divine Yu Jim. Obviously, Luo Nan needed to find people in the circle to understand the grudges and grievances of the martial artist circle in Xia City. But Luo Nan filtered through the people he knew in the society, and he only remembered Giant Arm. It was still a situation where he knew the other party, but the other party might not know him. Then he could only find someone close to him. Cragburst seemed to be the most suitable. That person came from the military, but he was one of the top 10 powerhouses in Xia City in terms of physical strength. He also had a lively temperament. He should have a common language with the martial artist circle. Luo Nan organized his words in his mind and sent a communication request to Cragburst. Unexpectedly, the system was still as cold as ever. The other party's communication is restricted. Please leave a message. Luo Nan could conclude that there was indeed a problem with the psychic wave network. He couldn't help but scratch his head. He was used to the convenience of the psychic wave network, and the members of the association would rarely record their wristband communication numbers. And he was no exception. Now, he had lost contact with all of them. He could only wait. At this time, the second generations were still hurting each other. Yao Feng poured out a pile of grievances, but Xie Junping was completely uninterested. He only asked what he was concerned about. Hey, that's a mutant. You placed it here. Don't tell me you messed around with Ocean Sky Cloud City, and then bought it from other shareholders at a low price. Hey, you can't talk nonsense about this kind of thing. Yao Feng's face turned green. He wished he could cover Xie Junping's mouth. Unfortunately, he couldn't cover it up. He could only grit his teeth and explain. It's a client. He's also a distant relative of my mother's. He loves collecting mutants, and was willing to spend a lot of money to order one. It wasn't easy to get it for him. But who knew that he would die from overexcitement while watching the underground boxing match? It's not suitable to put it back in the sea, so I can only leave it here. I've been having a headache these past few days because of this thing. Who are you trying to fool? Xie Junping wasn't fooled. In your Yao family, it's not easy to find cooking utensils, and there are ponds all over the place for fish. Is there a need to place them here to spoil the simulated ecosphere that you've painstakingly built? This is all business. Hey, Yao Si, are you sure you don't have any way to make money that you want to share? Xie Junping giggled mischievously as he held onto Yao Feng's shoulder. He stole a wink at Luo Nan. Since Yao Feng took the initiative to deliver himself to Luo Nan, there was absolutely no reason to let him go. This time, Xie Junping was going to keep a close eye on this predetermined middleman. He was going to establish a connection with Tang Yi through him, and Hu Huaying was on the sidelines. The two cooperated with great rapport. Luo Nan could only watch from the sidelines. He stayed for a long time, and listened to all the twists and turns. He felt that it was quite boring, and Xue Lei was still on the phone with the Daoguan. His feet were pacing endlessly. It seemed that things weren't going too smoothly. Luo Nan stood silently for a moment. Then his gaze turned to the simulated marine ecosystem behind him, which had just experienced an attack. After the monster fish wreaked havoc on this side, it fled into the depths of the crystal pillar. It had long since disappeared without a trace. However, even though a considerable amount of time had passed, the monster fish's power still lingered. Many schools of fish that were swimming leisurely were intimidated by an incorporeal pressure when they approached this area. They scattered and fled one after another. Beautiful purples and reds blossomed within the deep blue light. There was a different kind of marvelous beauty to it. Luonan calmly watched these chaotic schools of fish. Light swirled in his eyes, but he didn't open his eyes orifice to cultivate. He just did a few rough experiences. His feet slowly moved with the school of fish during this process. He was already quite a distance away from Xie Junping and the others by the time he came to his senses. He didn't care. In any case, he was communicating with Yao Feng right now. It wasn't his turn to appear. And as long as he wanted to, the entire party area was within the range of his clairvoyance. He wouldn't get lost. He tried to communicate with the psychic wave network, but it still hadn't recovered. He didn't think too much about it. He strolled forward along the viewing platform, stopping every now and then. His eyes observed the school of fish, and his mental senses went in and out. 2 different domains, 2 different modes. They were different, but because the sources of information overlapped, they displayed a marvelous corresponding relationship. Luonan walked halfway. The information on the mental plane and the material plane corresponded with each other, naturally triggering mutual interference. The magnitude of the interference was extremely small. It was perhaps 1,000 times weaker than the amount of soul strength transferred from the formatting barrier. However, the influence on the eye's orifice still existed in reality. Luonan's eye's orifice, what was even more rare, was that it was unending. It had the wonderful effect of silently moistening things. The recovery speed of the water level of the eye's orifice also slowly increased. Luonan savored the subtleties within in detail. He was absent-minded for a time. This is a good thing, right? He stopped moving. He had a feeling of unease. Luonan suddenly sensed something at this very moment. Though the thoughts and emotions in his mind were still a mess, his body moved according to his senses. He dodged slightly to the side, missing by a hair's breadth, perfectly dodging the petite figure behind him with her head lowered. However, the notebook that was stuck between his elbows was caught by something and fell to the ground. The page spread open, revealing the lines that had been scribbled on it. Only a rough outline could be seen. "Oh, I'm sorry." The girl who had nearly caused a rear-end accident apologized. She combed her long hair and bent over to pick up the notebook that had fallen to the ground. Her fingertips touched the page of the notebook when she suddenly realized something. She raised her head in astonishment. "Junior Nan." Luonan grunted and responded, "Senior Sister Tian." What a coincidence. The person who brushed shoulders with Luonan was none other than Tianxi. She smiled as she picked up the notebook and handed it back to Luonan. "It's not exactly a coincidence. You'll always see it if you participate in this party." "Are you pretending to be a doctor?" Tianxi tilted her head slightly and sized up Luonan's attire. This caused the tablet she was carrying on her shoulder to sway slightly. Luonan gave her a glance and laughed. "Senior sister is pretending to be a painter." He had studied for a period of time in a professional art foundational class when he was learning to sketch. He was no stranger to the attire of a professional. Tianxi was also very clever. She was still wearing the same attire she wore on campus. She just had an additional drawing clip, but she displayed a refined and gentle temperament. It was sublimated when contrasted with the tool. No one would be able to say that she was a female artist who had gone out to collect art. However, the drawing clip was most likely the thing that had just hung on the notebook. Tianxi replied with a smile. "I've always been in the Design Institute. Although I'm currently focused on industrial design, I did pursue some art in my early years. How is it?" "Not bad." "It's a good match." Luonan's words came from the bottom of his heart, but he had no intention of starting a conversation. He was currently in a restless state of mind. He said a few words out of courtesy and wanted to leave. Tianxi pursed her lips into a smile. She had the posture of having a long conversation. Junior brother Luo's attire is a bit strange. Luonan couldn't just ignore her words. He asked honestly, "What's strange about it?" "I just feel that junior brother Luo shouldn't be a doctor. It's purely a feeling." Tianxi's fingers playfully drew 2 circles around her temples. Then she pointed at the notebook that had just been delivered to Luonan's crook. "There's also this tool. It's a bit out of place." Luonan simply answered, "I carry it with me. I'm used to it." Luonan felt that it was truly strange for Tianxi to blurt out such meaningless words. The relationship between the two was superficial. Even if Tianxi wanted to find someone to chat with, she shouldn't have chosen him. Luonan's mind sensed something as soon as his thoughts reached this point. He focused his mind a bit and saw a young man in his early 20s behind Luonan. The young man's attire was basically similar to Luonan's. He was a doctor character with a tall and straight figure and a handsome appearance. However, the gaze that was cast in Luonan's direction was a bit unfriendly. Tianxi should be able to see this person from her angle, but she just acted as if she didn't know. She chatted with Luonan with a smile. Luonan looked at the expression and movements of the young doctor. He had more or less guessed what was going on. He shook his head in his mind. Tianxi leaned over. Was she expecting him to attract the firepower? None of the people who could participate in the 5 schools fellowship party were easy to deal with. He was young and not tall, so it would be a waste to use him as a shield. Just as he was pondering how to expose her, he heard Tianxi praise lightly. "I took a second look just now. Junior brother Luo's foundation in drawing lines is very solid. 3 years later, if I can enter the School of Design and inherit my family's teachings, it will definitely be a story to be told." Homeschool. Luonan's mind trembled. His original thoughts scattered in an instant, leaving behind only chaotic emotions. He didn't know how to respond for a time. Tianxi put her hands together and made an apologetic gesture. "I'm sorry, junior brother Luo. I found it very strange last time at Frost River Reality. You were the only one with a different surname among the group of Mo family youngsters. So I asked Mo Chio a question. Then I heard Tianxi mention a few things about you that were circulating in their society. I was curious for a moment, so I looked up some information. Only then did I find out that you are the child of Senior Zhongheng and Senior Sister Qingwen." Yes. Luonan's parents had indeed studied at the school's School of Design. Tianxi's words about homeschool were completely correct. Tianxi took a step forward, her attitude becoming more intimate. "Actually, I've been looking for an opportunity to thank you for the past few days." Luonan's mind was a bit numb. "What?" "Some time ago, I wanted to choose a topic for my graduation project. I also wanted to apply to be Professor Pan Wen's graduate student, but I rejected several topics in a row." Tianxi cast her gaze on Luonan's face. She spoke softly. "I really had no choice. Junior brothers matter just so happened to give me inspiration. I used Senior Sister Qingwen's coupling design theory from back in the day to do a new research topic." Chapter 294. Luonan's mood was indescribable in a short dozen or so seconds. Tianxi spoke of matters that were closely related to his family, but the information, the names and the concepts were all so unfamiliar. It was like he was in a dream. He strove to merge into it, but he was always lacking a bit. He could only do his utmost to memorize, afraid of missing a single word. He would completely dissipate when he woke up from the dream. He waited for Tianxi to stop talking, but he still wanted to continue. He subconsciously reached out and touched the protective glass between the viewing platform and the crystal pillar. He used the ice-cold sensation to make his mind a bit clearer, and he confirmed that Tianxi's words just now were not forgotten in the slightest. Perhaps his reaction was strange, but Tianxi was a bit puzzled. "Junior Nan." Luonan really wanted to tell her. "Tell me a bit more." But the words changed when they reached his mouth. "They graduated 20 years ago, right? Senior Sister Tian actually knows about them?" Tianxi's eyelids drooped slightly, and she revealed a gentle smile. After all, many years have passed. It would be a lie to say that I have a deep impression of them. But as long as I look up some information, many things will appear before my eyes. However, I've heard that when it comes to architectural philosophy and aesthetics, some old professors will always use gear as an example. Senior Sister Qingwen's name has always resounded. Luonan forced a smile. Is that so? In comparison, I admire Senior Zhongheng more. After all, I study industrial design, and Senior Zhongheng's theoretical knowledge is a bit stronger. Many of his research conclusions aren't outdated even now, including some conceptual product designs. They can be used at any time, saving me quite a bit of effort. Tianxi had clearly studied the information diligently. She spoke without thinking, and there was evidence to support her words. But what made Luonan feel awkward was that the more she spoke like this, the more confused he became. He didn't even know how to respond. His hesitation caused a gap to appear in the atmosphere of a coherent conversation. This gave a certain person an opportunity. Cece, the young doctor who had been observing from the back, all this time walked over with quick steps. His movements were very urgent, and he rudely stood between Luonan and Tianxi, using his shoulder to block Luonan's line of sight. Cece, you made it easy for me to find you. Luonan's brows furrowed. His fingers pressed against the protective glass. He had a bad feeling. He roughly understood why Tianxi could not wait to avoid this rather handsome, young doctor. Such a temperament and behavior were a waste of his good looks. Even the elites of the 5 schools were so unreliable. Luonan's mood turned very bad. He didn't want to get involved in this melodramatic matter. But the vast majority of what Tianxi had said was what he urgently wanted to hear, what he wanted to memorize. Tianxi had said that she had looked up a lot of relevant information for her graduation project. How could it be only this little? There must be a lot more in her stomach. But after the rush, it wouldn't be easy to fill it up. Luonan stared ahead at the spine wrapped in a white coat. He took a deep breath, but he was unable to suppress his fidgety mood. President Zhu. Tianxi hugged the drawing folder and crossed her arms over her chest. She took half a step back. Her body language was very distant, and she didn't even pretend to speak. Based on her usual smooth style, this performance was about to reach her limit. Unfortunately, President Zhu didn't sense this at all. Or perhaps he did sense it, but he didn't care. His body leaned forward, once again closing the distance between him and Tianxi. He used the tone of a host to speak. Cece, the party is about to officially begin. I solemnly invite you to pair up with me. Tianxi really couldn't take it anymore. She took another step back and stuck half of her body out. She extended her hand toward Luonan, forcefully diverting President Zhu's attention. Let me introduce you guys. This is President Zhu Maoxuan of the Cloud City Business School's Elite Society. This is my junior Luonan. Zhu Maoxuan was very dissatisfied with Tianxi's body language, and he didn't like Luonan at all. Well, he was already in a bad mood when he saw Luonan and Tianxi conversing and laughing 2 minutes ago. He had long since decided on a plan in his mind. Bullying juniors was no pressure for him. They were rookies after all. Rookies were meant to be bullied. Zhu Maoxuan was pondering over how to give the little boy in front of him, who had yet to shed his fetal hair, a deep impression. On the other side, Tianxi did something that made him fly into a rage. This petite, gentle, and beautiful girl directly bypassed him to walk over to Luonan's side. She even hooked her arm around the little boy's. Apologies, President Zhu. I just promised Junior Nan that I would bring him along tonight. Junior Nan just arrived at the school not too long ago. This is his first time participating in this sort of activity. He's still scratching his head. Tianxi seemed to feel that the action of hooking her arm was a bit too intimate. She let go and patted Luonan on the shoulder. She was older than Luonan by 6 or 7 years, but she was a bit shorter in stature. Patting her like this was a bit humorous and pretentious. In this way, it had nothing to do with the feelings between a man and a woman. Tianxi's series of actions caused Zhu Maoxuan's expression to fluctuate between clear and dark. He was unable to fathom her relationship with Luonan. Naturally, he was quite angry in his heart after being refused by Tianxi. However, if this was really a senior sister looking after her junior brother, then he would forcefully interfere. Things would really get out of hand, and he would lose a bit of face. Oh, hold on. He had observed Tianxi and Luo Nan from beginning to end from the moment they met. Since when did Luo Nan have a pleading expression? Mother **, you're playing me for a fool. Zhu Maoxuan's temperament had always been tyrannical. He had the nickname of the butcher in the Cloud City School of Business. This time, he had played the role of a doctor, which was an irony to this nickname. Today, he had hesitated for a few minutes and pondered a few more steps. This was already because he saw that Tianxi had a superior that he couldn't afford to offend. Now that the flames of anger had rushed forth, he didn't care a fart. He suddenly took a step forward, gritting his teeth and laughing out of habit. The muscles on both sides of his handsome cheeks pulsed, instantly becoming fierce and malevolent. At the same time, he grabbed the collar of Luo Nan's white coat. Zhu Maoxuan was nearly a head taller than Luo Nan. His arms and legs were longer. He reached out, and the little rookie was stupefied. He didn't react at all. It would be far too eye-catching to grab Luo Nan by the collar and threaten him in a public place. Zhu Maoxuan was an experienced character in this field. Though he grabbed fiercely, he was actually just grabbing the corner of Luo Nan's collar. He shook and shook, exerting a bit of force, letting the inside of Luo Nan's collar rub against Luo Nan's neck. Junior brother Luo, right? To be able to dress the same way as you is also fate. Today we get to know each other. I will remember you well. Don't doubt me. My memory has always been quite good. I won't forget any face. Raise your head. Don't be like a girl. The vicious voice commanded Luo Nan to raise his head. At the same time, he used an exceptionally vicious gaze to stab Luo Nan. Senior's teachings are enough for you to enjoy for 10 years. You can't even say thank you. The voice came to a sudden stop. Luo Nan raised his head and locked gazes with Zhu Maoxuan. He looked into Zhu Maoxuan's eyes. His eyes went from vicious to scattered, and then from scattered to vacant. All of these changes actually happened in an instant. Luo Nan gently removed Zhu Maoxuan's stiff hand. Zhu Maoxuan was like a soulless puppet. His joints were all rusted away. Luo Nan frowned and increased his strength, causing Zhu Maoxuan to stagger backward. Zhu Maoxuan instantly came back to his senses. It was as if he had touched a viper with his outstretched hand. He suddenly pulled it back, and even struck his own chest, hammering him until he grunted. He woke up a bit, and wanted to get angry again. But his heart trembled when he saw Luo Nan's gaze. He opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. He just turned around and walked away. Zhu Maoxuan walked far away, and he became a bit more clear-headed. He turned his head, wanting to come back, but he didn't have the courage. He could only extend his hand and point at Luo Nan. In the end, he left hatefully. Tianxi, who stood to the side, looked like she was watching an absurd play. She was unable to discern any logic from the beginning to the end. It was as if the boorish and troublesome Zhu Maoxuan had been possessed. He inexplicably dispersed his ferocity and walked away with his tail between his legs. What did Luo Nan do during this time? Tianxi only came back to her senses after being stunned for a full 5 seconds. She hastily apologized to Luo Nan. I'm sorry, junior brother Luo. Just now I was. Senior sister is very popular. Luo Nan didn't wish for the topic to stray too far. He spoke a few polite words, and then he didn't continue. He hoped that Tianxi would continue to talk about matters related to his mother. It would be fine even if she added that person. However, Tianxi's mood was still affected by this matter. Her eyes drooped in a daze for a moment, and she looked at the trembling water within the crystal pillar. She suddenly sighed with emotion. The scenery of the crystal pillar looks like a dream from afar. But when you look at it too much, it's nothing more than this. Just like this person, he looks limitless on the surface, but he's actually quite unbearable. Luo Nan didn't respond. He didn't hear the information he wanted to hear. He wasn't interested in Tianxi's situation or her state of mind. He just felt vexed in his heart. For the sake of calming his mood, he imitated Tianxi and looked at the ripples within the crystal pillar. Luo Nan's heart lantern of the eye's orifice had yet to reach the realm of small success over the past few days of cultivation. But his gaze had become much sharper. He saw that the swaying seawater had more or less returned to its original color when it approached the crystal pillar. However, it wasn't particularly clear. Fine impurities seeped within, undulating and floating. Upon closer inspection, the vast majority of the impurities were the shedding, fragmented body tissues and excrement of sea creatures. Luo Nan's gaze extended into the distance, and he saw shoals of fish stirring within the deep waters. The beautiful colors of nature attracted the visiting tourists to take pictures. Very few people thought that the impurities in the water originated from this place. There was a considerable portion of the impurities inside, and it was left behind by a crude predator like the devil ray. It looked dirty and messy, but there was an old saying: there are no fish when the water is too clear. There were also microorganisms, algae and small fish and shrimp that surrounded the impurities in the marine ecosphere. These links formed one after another, connecting head to tail. They formed a tight and indispensable chain. If a link was missing, and there was no competent human intervention, the consequences would never be too good. Luo Nan sighed when he thought of this. He faintly felt that this was quite similar to the difficult problem he was facing in his cultivation. However, his brain had long since been divided into two halves when he delved deeper into it. He was unable to think of anything, and his mood became even worse. He didn't want to beat around the bush in his vexation. He was prepared to go straight to the point and ask the senior sister to tell him everything she knew. Tianxi found a new connection point amidst her sorrow at this time. She suddenly turned her face around, and her delicate and charming face recovered its usual smile. Chapter 295. Tianxi pointed at the crystal pillar in front of her. She slowly said, "The core design concept of Ocean Sky Cloud City is to facilitate the close integration of the ocean system and the building system. Dynamics, data, ecology, and other elements are effectively connected. This is also an important part of senior sister Qingwen's coupling design." Luo Nan's gaze cut across the crystal pillar and the complex structure of the building. He used his mental senses to observe more specifically, but the more he did so, the more confused he became. He didn't know what to say next. The question he wanted to ask the most right now was, what is coupling design? Tianxi didn't understand Luo Nan's current predicament. Her smile grew more natural and intimate after she spoke. She clasped her hands together and made a praying gesture. "Junior brother Luo, may I be so bold as to ask if your family has any information left behind by the two seniors? I want to make a copy for reference. Of course, I will pay great attention to intellectual property." Luo Nan gaped. At this very moment, a bit of face was not worth mentioning in the face of his intense thirst. He turned to the side and stared at Tianxi. "Senior sister Tian, my mother passed away early. She separated from my father a long time ago. There is practically no information about them at home." Tianxi went, "Ah, so it's like this. Sorry, I thought." Luo Nan interrupted her before she could finish speaking. He spoke urgently. "Senior sister, can you give me a copy of the information you collected? I really need it. I really do." Tianxi suddenly understood what Zhu Maoxuan was feeling when she was enveloped by Luo Nan's gaze. Luo Nan's eyes were a mess of color under the deep blue light, but there was an indescribable pressure that penetrated her. It was as if a layer of raging flames had burned through her eyes and heart. It made her want to close her eyes in haste, and her heartbeat sped up. Tianxi was a member of the Mutual Assistance Association. Her ability to express herself had always been her forte, but right now, her ability to express herself, which represented logic and reason, vanished like smoke in the blink of an eye as she faced Luo Nan's eyes. Instead, the emotions she had successfully suppressed all this time intertwined and tangled in her mind. She was a bit stupefied for a time. Only with great difficulty did a thought emerge. They really are alike. Sure enough, they are the same type of people. Luo Nan and that person's figures overlapped, bursting with sparks. Tianxi's mind trembled heavily. She unconsciously took a step back. "Senior sister Tian?" Luo Nan didn't quite understand Tianxi's reaction. "Wait a moment. Tianxi's condition finally recovered a bit, but her throat was still a bit tight and dry. She lowered her head, not daring to look Luo Nan in the eye. She was afraid that her soul would fly out of her body if she took another glance. She lowered her head and fiddled with her wristband. She closed her eyes, adjusted her breathing, and sorted out her emotions. 3 seconds later, she began to operate and brought up a series of data that she had saved in advance. It was originally your parents' information. If junior brother wants it, it's just a matter of asking. Tianxi raised her head and forced a smile. I'll share the information I've stored in the cloud with you. Most of it comes from the Academy's electronic library, and some of it requires a certain level of authority. You might not have it now, but you should be able to access it in advance if you look for Department Head Xia. Luonen clasped his hands together and expressed his thanks over and over. Thank you, senior sister Tian. Thank you. Tianxi knew from this that Luonen wasn't able to see anything deeper. She let out a breath of relief, and her mind became a bit more lively. She pulled out a blueprint that Luonan was currently unable to see, and set it into projection mode. Due to the large interference from the deep blue light in the vicinity of the crystal pillar, Tianxi took out a drawing clip and used it as a cover, allowing Luonan to clearly see the diagram displayed within. Even so, the area of clarity was relatively limited. Luonan unconsciously moved closer and stood shoulder to shoulder with Tianxi. They leaned their heads against each other as they watched earnestly. This is the tender that the designer of Cloud City Water Village submitted in the year 82. Look here. The company's technical consultant is none other than Professor Pan 1. According to what she said, she originally wanted to lead a team in the bid to verify senior sister Qingwen's theory. Unfortunately, it wasn't particularly successful. She still holds this regret to this day. Tianxi fiddled with the AR image, causing the three-dimensional perspective of Ocean Sky Cloud City's initial design to display the complex and precise structure from every angle as much as possible. Professor Pan said that though Ocean Sky Cloud City merged with the ocean system, its craftsmanship was too heavy. It could only be used as a weight to be unconventional and unconventional. It wasn't successful in terms of construction theory. It was far inferior to gear, which was as if it was formed by nature. There were practically no traces of craftsmanship. Luonen listened with pride and sadness. His eyes looked at the perspective of Ocean Sky Cloud City, but his heart was thinking about gear. Tianxi could more or less understand his current mood. She thought for a bit, and added some gossip she had heard through hearsay. I heard that Professor Pan specifically made a design for this. The wetlands of the Academy can be seen with the naked eye from the high-level observation deck of Ocean Sky Cloud City. This includes gear on the North Shore. The two buildings, one high and one low, mutually reflect each other. Really? Tianxi hadn't even finished speaking when Luonan impatiently interrupted her. Tianxi didn't think he was being rude. She just said, Cloud City Water Village has a set of ring-shaped buildings. Aside from the main building, only Ocean Sky Cloud City just happens to face the Academy. There aren't any other high-level buildings blocking one's line of sight. The height and angle are all decent. There should be some basis to this. Luonan immediately asked, which floor is the high-level observation deck on? The 142nd floor. Junior wants to go see it? Luonan nodded. He didn't say a word as he walked straight to the nearest high-speed elevator. Tianxi thought for a bit and followed. Compared to Luonan's undistracted state of mind, her gaze shuttled back and forth among the stream of people on the floor, searching for the target in her heart. She didn't expect that she wouldn't be able to find her target. She saw Zhu Maoxuan, who had just left in a sorry state, walk over with large strides with a gloomy expression. There were a few people by his side who had similarly unkind expressions. It can't be to the extent of getting into a brawl at a party. Tianxi found it hard to imagine such a scene. She couldn't help but feel fear in her heart. She wanted to find the location of the security guards, but she unfortunately bumped into Zhu Maoxuan's line of sight in the distance. Her heart panicked. The muscles on Zhu Maoxuan's cheeks pulsed. He said something to the people by his side, and his feet sped up, Ding! The bell rang. Luonan had already pressed the button to open the door of the high-speed elevator and stepped inside. Tianxi whispered, "Wait for me." She chased after him in 3 steps. Her drawing clip slid from her shoulder to her elbow, and it bumped into the edge of the elevator as it swayed. She gasped slightly, "Hurry, Zhu Maoxuan." Just as she started speaking, a muffled rumble sounded from the floor. Tianxi shuddered, and the light in the corner of her eyes changed. She instinctively turned her head and saw a dark shadow facing the crystal pillar directly from the elevator door. The shadow pushed against the enormous waves of water and heavily smashed into the inner wall of the pillar. The violent impact instantly painted the crystal pillar with a layer of fine white lines. The transmitted sound waves shook people's hearts. It practically made people believe that this enormous crystal pillar would shatter on the spot under the impact. The one that created all of this was without a doubt the mutated Devil Ray. The participants who were observing the shoals of fish cried out in alarm practically in unison. Such a scene was even more frightening than the one just now. Moreover, the Devil Ray's behavior was much more berserk than before. It swam along the edge of the crystal wall, and its flat head smashed into the inner wall of the pillar over and over again. It was filled with restless emotions. Its body was enormous, and its force of impact was tremendous. There were clearly 2 layers of protection between them, but no one actually dared to approach. They were afraid that this monster would break through the protective layer and swallow them whole. Tianxi instinctively covered her mouth, suppressing the cry of alarm back into her throat. The elevator door immediately closed. Luonan swept a few glances at the crystal pillar before lowering his gaze to look straight at his own toes. It was as if there was nothing else in this world that could arouse his interest. Zhu Maoxuan and the others walked over aggressively. They just so happened to walk to the edge of the Devil Ray's collision zone. They were given quite a fright. They involuntarily followed the crowd and stopped to watch. It was Zhu Maoxuan who saw the elevator door close from afar. He urged them with a few words, and only then did the group of people catch up. But at this time, the high-speed elevator had already gone up. Keep an eye on the floor. Zhu Maoxuan made up his mind. He was going to give the adulterous couple a good look in this building. He slapped the elevator button, summoning a parallel elevator. He cursed and swore, venting his emotions that were on the verge of exploding. Luckily, the other high-speed elevator arrived quickly. Zhu Maoxuan glanced at the floor number and took the lead. He walked into the elevator, and the others rushed in as well. It stopped at the 133rd and 142nd floors. What's on the 133rd floor? It looks like an office area. 142. The high-level observation deck. That's it. Zhu Maoxuan quickly set his target. He ground his teeth and closed the elevator door, isolating the cries of alarm and clamor from the floor. Just 2 seconds later, another strange sound reverberated back and forth in the relatively quiet space. It flooded into their ears. Kacha 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 kacha. The rhythm was monotonous, and there was no change whatsoever. It was as if someone was fiddling with an old-fashioned pair of scissors back and forth. It didn't stop, and it made one's heart fidgety. Who set this ringtone? This was the first thing Zhu Maoxuan thought of. His companions were all stupefied. Zhu Maoxuan finally discovered that there was an unfamiliar fellow who had boarded the elevator with them. Perhaps he had been in the elevator earlier. He had been wholeheartedly focused on surrounding the adulterous couple, but he hadn't discovered them. It was a public place after all. The man wore a pure black suit and sunglasses. His clothes were ramrod straight, and he looked like a bodyguard or a security agent from a TV program. He would be quite recognizable if he were to be displayed at a party. However, the most eye-catching thing was the necktie worn by the sunglasses man. It was garish, but upon careful inspection, one would see that there were all sorts of beetles engraved on it. Perhaps it was because the necktie was tinted, but under the illumination of the light, a faint metallic luster seeped through it. The beetle's compound eyes flashed with light, brimming with a treacherous and unconventional color. The sunglasses man felt Zhu Maoxuan's gaze, and he slightly tilted his head. His eyes seemed to have shifted over. Zhu Maoxuan foolishly looked over and locked gazes with this eccentric fellow. The latter cracked open his mouth and faintly smiled, revealing a mouthful of pitch-black teeth that were branded with dazzling 5-colored patterns. Ding! The elevator door opened, and Zhu Maoxuan and his party walked out. The elevator door immediately closed. The group of people at the elevator door looked around in a daze. Where are those two? 124. They're not on this floor. Then why did they come down? Because you're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.